I think every Auburn fan should appreciate how Hugh Freeze handled the media yesterday.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zach Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. You everydayers know it's Charlie Tuesday, Auburn message board legend, Charlie 5, also known as Kyle Rush, over at thebarnauburn.com, Auburn's newest message board. Go join today, thebarnauburn.com.
Just hit our 1 month anniversary today.
Wow.
Or
We're getting so old. We're getting so old.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the defense later in today's show, as well as obviously the plans at quarterback, which is going to be dispersed all throughout this conversation today. But the way Hugh Freeze handled the media yesterday at his press conference at Tiger Talk, I thought it was a masterclass on how to calm the fan base down, Kyle. Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's any other way to put it.
No, totally. He did 4 things that I loved. Okay. And I think everybody that's having a hard time with this situation. If you listen to it, you listen to everything he said. Number one, he acknowledged the poor play of Peyton Thorne right off the bat. He acknowledged that is not what we see in practice. That is not what we hold. That is not the standard that we are going to play at, and it's
right.
Not excusable. You can be great in practice, but eventually it's got to carry over to game. So he acknowledged that. He acknowledged that they may have overdid it a little bit on the game plan. Maybe the game plan was a little bit too big, a little bit too much for what the different fronts that Cal was giving them, and they should have stuck to what they did best. So he took ownership there of the game plan. Yep. And again, he stated that practice performance doesn't cut it anymore. So we're not going to continue to go back on who's the best player in practice. And then he kind of implied that Hank actually has a shot here this week to maybe get some playing time or maybe completely unseat Peyton this week. It looks like they're going to take a really close look at how it goes in practice and then and see what happens. He was non-committal on who the starter is going to be Saturday.
Yeah, and that's the first time he's really handled comments publicly about Peyton in that way. Any time in the past there's been, with the exception of after the bowl game, which I think had to do with his footing going into the December transfer portal, which makes sense. But other than that, the next time we talked to him after that was in Mobile when he was checking out the players that were down there for the Senior Bowl. Every other time he's been like, yeah, Peyton's a starter. Peyton's the guy. You know, we're rolling in the spring with him being the starter.
Yes.
This is the first time it's felt different. This is the first time where he has said things where like he had several opportunities to say, yeah, you know, Peyton's our guy as of right now, but we're going to move forward. He didn't even say that. He didn't even say, hey, Peyton's our guy right now, but we are going to have some conversations about some other guys on the team.
He didn't say he's on a short leash. He didn't say, anything like that. He just said, I can't tell you what's going to happen. We're going to have to see what happens during practice, basically, is what he said.
So, I mean, it seemed pretty genuine. We've said that before about Freeze. Most of the time he's talking to the media where like it seemed pretty raw. Like it seemed like he was talking from the heart, especially when he was asked about the quarterback, I don't want to say controversy, quarterback discussion, QB1 situation. He talked about like, hey, he's been doing well in practice, and it's really hard not to play the guy who's been the best at practice, but at some point it's got to translate to the game. And Peyton, to use his words, has been head and shoulders better than the other quarterbacks. I just felt like you've got to play that guy. But to me, like just the way that he was so raw and it felt pretty honest. I think I don't think Freeze knows what to do. Which is, I don't really know how to feel about that, if I'm being honest, but I imagine it is a tough situation to be in.
I'll say this. I listened to you and Dap talking about the condensing of the playbook, and I have a little bit of a different take on it. I feel like it's less about Peyton and more about Hank than anything. If the only reason Hank can't get in the game is because he doesn't know all the checks, he doesn't know all of the whatever, the protections, things like that, then and that's the level playing field. That's the playing field that is just not level. Let's level it and let them execute the exact same thing and really see what we have. You played football in high school. You don't start out the year just with everything guns blazing. I still feel like we tried to make this passing game thing be a little bit more than what we're capable of doing right off the bat. So I don't have necessarily a problem.
But Kyle, I mean, the passing game consists of Peyton Thorne going to his 4th year as a starting quarterback.
Doesn't matter. It's a new system. That to me, that doesn't really matter.
I guess, but just your ability to learn a playbook and all, like you should. The terminology is going to change, sure, but as far as like concept of what you're looking for, I can't imagine to be that much. But I mean, you've got a 4th year quarterback
who's limited. He's limited. He is limited talent wise when it comes to in-game processing. That's something that he's limited.
I guess so. But then like the guys you throw into Keandre Lambert-Smith, Rivaldo Fairweather, Robert Lewis, these guys have played a ton of college football. And then Cam Coleman, who we all agree, it's like we can treat Cam Coleman different than any other freshman. Like we all agree on that. But to me, it's just, I don't think it was crazy for them to ask a lot of these guys. But you're hearing guys running the wrong routes. You're hearing, Peyton not being able to process what's happening. I don't know if it's more pre-snap or post-snap. My gut says it's more post-snap stuff. But like, I don't think Freeze was in the wrong of pushing the guys. But I do think it's like, okay, like what happened this past Saturday? We all kind of said it's like, this is unacceptable. And it seems like this coaching staff not only agrees, but they're seeing like, okay, do we actually do something about this? Which I do think is refreshing.
I don't necessarily think that it's so much about asking them to do so much as it's about having, I mean, clearly whatever that play sheet was big enough to where it caused some confusion. I mean, you got confusion on the wide receiver side, you got confusion on the offensive line protection side. There was, and he basically said, I think instead of picking what we do really well, I think what we did was Cal throws a bunch of different fronts out there, and then we had a bunch of different game plans for all those different fronts versus just trying to do what we do best. And I said that. I said, I wonder if, you coach different in the NIL era. Your coach, I feel like it makes you want to have to feel like you got to make people be happy. Like you got to keep receivers happy. And maybe you're doing stuff outside of what you're good at. And I don't know. I kind of feel like he basically said that today.
Maybe so. I just have a hard time, and I'm not a quarterback. Never have been. I was in intramural league in college.
Stud.
Undefeated regular season my senior year. Then we played the rugby team in the playoffs.
They still talk about it. They still talk about that.
Yeah, I do. I do. But I have a hard time thinking, okay, the amount of plays that we brought into the game plan is what makes Peyton Thorne know a receiver is open and still hold the ball or not throw with anticipation. I have a hard time buying the, like, okay, we're over prepared for this defense that we're about to see. And so our quarterback's going to hold on to the ball an extra second to second and a half on a consistent basis. Like, I don't know if those things are connected or not. Kyle, I have a hard time seeing you bridge those two things, but maybe it's related. I don't know. Am I off on that?
Well, I mean, it depends. Like, we don't know what Peyton has to do when he walks up to the line. Okay. And we know when things go south, his processing ability is what really goes south. Okay. So if you start off the game well, you have the tip pass that was an interception, and then everything's shut down after that.
Sure.
We don't know what all he had to do when he goes to the line and what all different variables there are. But at times last year, the stats weren't great from a passing perspective, but he was at least serviceable in games like this. And I don't like the term dumbing down. I don't like that. I just think you got to have some stuff that you're good at. And just like you said, I think we got to have a less amount of plays and more stuff that we're good at, and then run those at a high level.
But the thing, like, we're talking about this like he's a freshman.
I don't necessarily think that's relevant. A freshman has nothing to do with it. He's not gifted. He's not super gifted, and you're asking him to do things that he can't do. I think that's it. It's not so much about the year that he is, and more about he's not he's not super talented at being able to be a high level. He's not an NFL prospect. He's not a high level SEC quarterback. So you got to take the things that he can do well and accentuate those. I think that's what it boils down to. It doesn't matter if he's 30 years old. He's not going to be that talented when he's 30 either. He could be in college for 8 years. He's limited. Does that make sense? I just think he's limited.
Yeah, I guess so. And then it's like, was Freeze just off on everything that he said? Like, was his staff just wrong?
Maybe it's legitimately what he said. He does everything well in practice, and when things go south in the game, he turns into this. He's like this Jekyll and Hyde character, and that can't happen anymore.
Let's talk about the plan now at quarterback, because I do think Hugh Freeze's messaging yesterday, it could go one of two ways, maybe both, but I think more so one or the other. And I want to get your thoughts on what this could mean. That's next, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Ultimate College Football Head Coach. Kyle, can you imagine? Can you imagine being in the shoes of a head coach?
I can't.
Quarterback controversy after 2 games.
Condensing playbooks. I mean, it's crazy.
It is crazy. Do you go with the redshirt freshman or the guy who's going into, his 4th year starting? I mean, you can download Ultimate College Football Head Coach right now
and make those calls.
Yeah, you can make the calls and prove yourself right.
Put Hank in. You can do it.
You can do it. You can do it at Ultimate College Football Head Coach. The game's completely free. It's got no ads. It's 100% playable offline. You can play on the go as you want, when you want to. I'm going to be honest. I've downloaded this. It's not easy. It's not an easy game. There's so much you've got to focus on. It's fun though. We've got a special offer for Locked On Auburn listeners. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, inside the game store, and you'll receive a free boost to your program. Download the game. You can just go to ultimate-cfb.com, or you can look it up on your phone's app store. Just search Ultimate College Football Head Coach. That is what I did. It came right up. Download it today. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. The everydayers know, like this is going to be a topic that isn't going to go away. But when you look at what Hugh Freee said yesterday, where he talked about just really him refusing and being reluctant to name Peyton Thorne the starter moving forward, I think is pretty telling. So let me ask you this, because I think it could be one of two things. And I actually think it's more of the latter. It could be, yes, this is a true battle now going into Auburn's 3rd game against New Mexico between Peyton Thorne and Hank Brown. It could be that, Kyle. Or, and this is where I'm leaning to as far as this week, this could be like an actual 2-week process. But as far as going into New Mexico, I think this is sending a message while preparing for the worst. Make sure Hank's ready for the rest of the season. But I think this is sending a message to Peyton Thorne. We're like, this is not like, you're not guaranteed this job anymore. And using Hank as a tool to kind of, light a fire under Peyton Thorne, saying like, hey, the way you've been doing this isn't good enough. We're going to alter things to maybe make things simpler for you. But if you do not get better, you will get pulled. Yeah. To me, I think that is the messaging to Peyton, is like, this job is not yours anymore. You have to earn it each and every week.
So the reason I think it's legitimate and not just messaging is because if you remember last fall, we had to name Peyton the starter because he was pressing too much. So if you have a quarterback that struggles when he's pressing, the last thing you want to do is, if you need him, is press him. So I feel like this is legitimate. I think the messaging is very legitimate. I think that either the way I think it would probably play out is they're going to have a very similar playbook that they can both execute, and you're going to get into the game. And if it may not necessarily be points on the board as it is what decisions you're making. what does it like how you're not necessarily even executing the decisions you're making, and if it's an RPO or a read option or who's open, what slide protection you're getting, what protection you're getting the offensive line in, what audibles you check into and out of. I think when people say short leash, I believe it. I believe it now, and I think the messaging is there that I think this is a legit thing.
Yeah.
I could see the pathway. I could see the pathway that Hank starts on Saturday. I really could.
I can too. I can too. And honestly, I think you can make the argument. I don't think there is an argument. Like if the year that's been circled since Hugh Freeze arrived here was 2025, you need to start Hank. If it's close at all, you take the guy that has 4 years left of eligibility. In my mind, at this point, thank you, Peyton, for trusting Hugh Freeze and giving us your time here. But like, if you're not significantly better than the dude who has shown a ton of upside and can be here in 2025, because you need to know if Hank or Walker or Holden is your dude for 2025, because that's the year where you think you're going to have enough talent to make a playoff run. You get Bama and Georgia at home in 2025. You need to know going into the transfer portal window in December if you've got your quarterback or not. So if it's close at all, you've got to start Hank.
Yeah, and I totally understand that argument. And I think I probably side more there than I would elsewhere. I don't typically like that. The season's not over. So I don't typically like to say as soon as you have a loss, you trash everything and you put in young guys and build for the future. There's still a lot. I feel like there's still
the caveat here is like if it's close.
Yeah. Okay. I'm with you. When you dumb down when you condense the playbook, and if he can't figure it out, then you definitely, if it's close there, then you definitely have to move. But again, I don't know the details of practice. I don't know when he says Peyton performs head and shoulders over Hank in practice. What does that mean?
So I asked around on this after he said that, and I didn't get a straight answer, but I am like, my context clues as far as guessing is like Peyton is like, he does do well in practice from what I'm told, but he also has the better weapons that he throws to consistently when it's 11 on 11. Like, of course you're going to look better when you have the options to throw to Cam Coleman instead of, who's
Perry Thompson?
Sure. I guess, I assume Perry's probably more with the twos and practice with the ones. And so, no disrespect to those guys that are, that Hank may be throwing to, but like, if Hank was throwing to Cam Coleman or KLS or Rivaldo in practice, like, I think everybody would look better, right? Like, I don't think that's a crazy thing to say. So that's just me guessing at this, but like, it does sound like Peyton does well in practice. But I also think his options and weapons that he has when they go team seems to be better.
I wonder if it's even so much the physical aspect of it I wonder if it's more in practice, the mental aspect of it over the physical, because I feel like there's not much from a physical standpoint. They're really different. I heard Malcolm Simmons out of his own mouth say Hank is the best placement quarterback I've ever been around. Mm-hmm. And I catch balls from Peyton Thorne. I catch balls from Hank. I know I'm only a freshman, but as far as when he's throwing me the ball and throwing me passes, nobody places it better than Hank. So that makes me think maybe it's way more than just the physical aspect that Hugh's looking for. And if he can, I guess, take that away, if he can take away the big mental aspect of it and sort of condense it a little bit, maybe that gives, Hank the ability to make another step. Yeah. I don't know. I'm just guessing based off of everything that we talked about.
Yeah. We're just trying to kind of connect, bits of information that we've picked up in different places, but I just want to remind everyone that like the decision that Hugh Freeze has to make this week about starting quarterback, or I guess the next 2 weeks, like this is a tough spot for him. Yeah. I mean, this like he has hitched his wagon to Peyton Thorne publicly, and like Peyton hasn't lived up to what Freeze expected.
No,
and like this is tough for everybody involved. Like if Freeze would have thought Thorne was going to be a part, like the leader of an offense that turned it over 5 times against Cal, like he probably wouldn't have started him. No, probably wouldn't have started him. So like to me, I just let's think on this. Like when you're having this conversation, when you're typing these comments and you're putting these things out there, like this is a tough situation for everyone involved because this did not go. I mean, I can't imagine what Peyton is going through now. I mean,
I know, man.
I mean, he's been competitive. I mean, he's a competitive guy. You don't get to this point in your career without being extremely competitive. And so I'm sure he's just super shaken up about all of this. So just kind of keep all that in mind when you're discussing this with your coworkers or your friends and family and each other in the comments, whatever. So
sure.
The farther we get away from Saturday's game, I can't stop thinking about the defense. I think it was extremely underrated. Let's jump into that in just a moment. Right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at 5 Hour Energy. Kyle, I want you to give me a one word. I'm going to say one thing, and I just want you to just tell me how it makes you feel. Grape flavored 5 Hour Energy.
Oh gosh, pure ecstasy.
Pure ecstasy. 5 Hour Energy. Look, you can grab Angelic. There you go.
Yeah.
Grab a 5 Hour Energy. You can stay alert to watch any sporting event if it's late at night. You got a night game this weekend. If you want to make sure you're fired up for the entire thing, grab a 5 Hour Energy. It's the brand hardworking people like you have trusted for over 20 years to give them the alert, energized feeling that they need to get through the busy and hectic day. Go to 5hourenergy.com. That's the number 5hourenergy.com and get some 5 Hour Energy product today. You can use our promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all one word, LOCKEDONCFB, to receive 20% off your order. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. Kyle, when you look at what the defense did, and I know that like Mendoza, is that his name? Yes. The Cal quarterback. Yeah, it's really not about him. It's about what the defense did. Like the adjustments they made in the second half, I thought were tremendous and are going to get overlooked because of the lack of offense. But just the context of the offense turned it over 5 times.
14 points off turnovers.
14 points off turnovers. They only allowed 21 in the entire game. And they allowed just like 320 total yards of offense. And to me, like, that's just going to get overlooked in this entire thing. Because if Auburn's offense just is okay, like they blast them. But the offense was just historically awful on Saturday. But the adjustments by the defense, hats off to the staff and hats off to the guys in the front seven that did better at containment in the second half, as well as overall pressure. Guys like Keldrick Falk, who took over in parts of the game. And the DBs got better over the course of the game as well.
I'm probably going to butcher this stat, but I think I got it right. Okay. Auburn had roughly, I think, 13 drives on offense. Okay. 7 out of the 13 ended in 3 plays or less. And a couple of them ended in 2 plays or less with a turnover. So you were talking about exposing your defense, giving your defense so much more exposure for something bad to happen. You had 2 short field turnovers that ended in points. And then you had, eventually they broke a long run in the second half. But Keldrick, at one point, I'm not losing this game. And he had like 2 sacks in a row. One that should have, how it wasn't a fumble, I have no idea. That it was a miracle that kid didn't fumble the ball. And he had another drive stopping tackle for loss, I believe, on the very next drive. He just kind of took over. I'm with you. The adjustments made were something that it should give you a little bit of excitement or a little bit of something to look forward to. You got something here. I think you got something here on defense. Yes, you have some weaknesses. No, you're not perfect. But the way they adjusted was something to behold, because they were dinking and dunking us to death and hitting their 50-50 chances when they took them. And then it seemed like all of a sudden Auburn's getting pressure. You're putting them behind the chains, which is exactly what I said you needed to do. Is they're going to be a dink and dunk offense. If you can have 1 tackle for loss, you put them in a bind, and they did
That's right.
that. They started doing that in the second half, and I'm with you. A lot of I kind of like last year. There's a lot of defensive performances that go completely overlooked because of the poor offense. This is going to be one of them too. I feel like they played really, really well.
I'm with you. I'm with you. And the adjustments and like the lack of depth at corner, like they really made the most of it. You didn't see a whole lot of Keontae Scott in the second half. There's a narrative out there that he went to nickel in the second half, and like that's not. He played 4 snaps inside. Like that's not a narrative. Like that's not a true narrative that what we saw. So just want to kind of correct some folks on that. But you saw Antonio Kite, who I wasn't super impressed with in the first half, and he looked a lot better in the second half for sure. I don't know if it doesn't sound like it was a scheme adjustment. It sounds like a lot of it was execution.
That's exactly what they said. They said, hey, we didn't really change a ton. We just had dudes. They started executing.
Right. Malik Blockton is going to be special as a defensive lineman.
Yes.
I mean,
Hugh bragged on him. Hugh really loves these young guys, these young classes. Hugh really bragged on him in the press conference today.
Yeah, rightfully so. What do you think about this? Is now the second game in a row where there's been a key player. I'll classify both these guys as key players that have played some, but have been kept out largely due to a hamstring issue. Robert Lewis in game 1, Keontae Scott in game 2 played through a hamstring a little bit, and then in the second half, they kept him out for the hamstring, but he still returned punts. What are your thoughts on that? That's a little weird to me.
Yeah, hammies are typically lingering. I don't know. What angle are you going with this one?
I don't think there's any angle. I just think it's weird. I've never heard that before. They've either got a hurt or hammy or they don't. Like
feels like punt return would be harder maybe on a hammy because you have to catch it and accelerate and be moving in a lot of different directions versus just backpedaling.
Just rest them. Yeah. Like just rest them then is my thing. So I don't know. I didn't
know if you had some kind of conspiracy theory.
No, I mean, I guess a conspiracy theory could be like, did Keontae get benched at outside corner for Antonio Kai? But like, that's not what I'm insinuating. I'm just genuinely asking the question. I think it's interesting. So do you monitor the reps for those guys against New Mexico? Because it's like, if you got a lingering hammy, like just don't play, like rest them. But I mean, the training staff's going to know way more about how to treat that than me. I've just never heard it before. Never heard of that before. So I thought that was interesting. So, hey, Mick, Kyle, thebarnauburn.com.
It's popping.
I mean, we're now over a month old over there, but it is absolutely popping. Tell people about it.
Yeah, I mean, in 1 month, we're closing in on 1,000 subscribers.
Insane.
Over 7,600 posts. You want to talk about activity? It's a cool hangout, man. Not only is there info, but there's great conversations. Hey, there's a couple of, we were mad this weekend. There's a couple dust ups. I mean, you get a little crazy too at the barn. No, but it's all in good fun. You can sign up for $1 for the first month and try it out and see what you think. I've had so many people say, hey, I wanted to give it a shot. Loved it. I'm in. I'm locked in. Let's go. So you should try it too. Thebarnauburn.com. That's where you can catch me. You can catch Zach, Dap, a little bit of everybody dropping nuggets in there and having good conversation. It's a lot of fun stuff going on.
Yeah. And so many folks comment, like, especially when Lindsay's on, like that we need to have more like Auburn baseball nuggets. If you're an Auburn baseball fan, Lindsey Crosby is in there.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, he's really the only one dropping baseball nuggets this time of year. So be sure to check him out over there too. That's all at thebarnauburn.com. And that's also, go to the Barnes YouTube page. That's where Kyle has a show. His show, the Top Button Podcast. My show with Brad Law is on there as well. So be sure to subscribe there.
Got a Hoops pod too, dropping with Zep every Tuesday and Thursday.
Zep Jasper co-hosting over at the Barn. Like,
we got us a new intro video. It's tight.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy over there. So yeah, come hang out with us over there. Hey, please like the video. Please subscribe. We'll see you next time. This has been Locked On Auburn.